In my previous life, it wasn't until I went to register my son's household record that I discovered my husband David had already registered Rachel, his mistress, as his wife in the military district. Even worse, he had listed Rachel's son, Ethan, under his name. It was the height of the one-child policy. Rachel's child was accepted into the military school, while my son, Ryan, was labeled a bastard and rejected by everyone. I threatened David with death. Only then did he agree to let my child come with the military unit, but only under the identity of his nephew. On the journey to join him, Ryan was kidnapped by human traffickers on the train. All that was left behind were 2 tiny severed pinkies. I went hysterical, begging David to place a missing child ad in the paper. He scoffed, calling me overdramatic. "Can't you be more reasonable?" he said. "Ryan is already disabled. If we can't find him, then just accept it. If you keep making a scene, the gossip will hurt Rachel and Ethan." Utterly devastated, I jumped into the river. But when I opened my eyes again, I found myself back on the very same day I was registering Ryan's household record. This time, I knelt at the gates of the military base, sobbing and begging the organization to stand up for me. After I successfully registered Ryan under my name at the Civil Affairs Bureau, I marched straight into the police station next door and caused a scene. "Officer, you have to help me. That man David took another wife behind my back. I'm his legal wife, but my son can't even get a proper household registration. If you don't give me justice, I'll take my son and die right here. I'll make such a fuss that David won't be able to sweep this under the rug." 3 days after I filed my complaint, David returned with his whole new family, much quicker than in my past life, where I had to risk everything to bring him home. Back then I had sent 3 telegrams and received no reply. In the end, I cut open my thumb and wrote him a letter in blood. It took him a month to return, but this time a single phone call from the police was enough to bring him back instantly. Rachel strutted in wearing a gaudy bright red outfit with her hair curled in tight waves, handing out wedding candy to the villagers as she walked. The older women who received the sweets surrounded her, chirping David with such familiarity as if they had always accepted her. A mischievous kid had already run up to my house, making faces at me. "You're not really Uncle David's wife. Ryan doesn't have a dad. He's a bastard." Ryan saw my tears and gently placed his soft little hand on my cheek. "Don't cry, Mommy. Ryan has Mommy." I held him tightly, letting the bitter flood of emotions wash over me. Suddenly I heard movement at the door. I turned to find David standing there, his expression impatient and cold. Ryan curled up in my arms, looked up and asked curiously, "Mommy, who are they?" Hearing his question, both David and Rachel looked awkward. I didn't want my son to find out just yet that his father was the kind of man who abandoned his family. I had always told Ryan that he was the son of a hero. I told him to go inside and play, then lifted my eyes to face David. "Why is her son registered under your name?" he asked. At that, the 2 of them visibly panicked. Before David could explain, his son Ethan had already wandered around my yard and returned. "Dad, your hometown is so poor. There's no TV, no fridge, and the toilet smells. How do people live here? I want to go home." Ethan wrinkled his nose in disgust, staring at my modest yard with disdain. He wore a miniature military uniform and strutted around proudly. Meanwhile, Ryan's baby rattle had been something I made from scraps. Hearing Ethan's whining, David pulled out a milk candy from his pocket and gently coaxed him. "Ethan, go inside now. It's cold out here. Mommy and Daddy need to talk to this lady for a bit, and then we'll go." Watching that warm little moment, I couldn't help but feel bitter inside. When David noticed me staring, a flicker of guilt crossed his face. "Ethan's a poor child," he said softly. "He lost his father at birth. At the military base, kids like him get bullied. Back then, since we didn't have any children yet, I decided to put him under my name." "Then what about our child?" I asked, calm but cold. David hesitated for a moment before speaking. "School registration isn't based on household status. I can let Ryan attend school as my nephew. That's exactly what he said in my last life. And just like that, Ryan's father became a lie. David, a man supposedly martyred in service. David, as a supposed martyr, never asked the military for any compensation. He said he only wanted the child to grow up in the military district. In my previous life, David took the initiative to take responsibility for caring for Rachel and her son, and he made a promise to me, saying he was doing it out of gratitude and guilt toward his father. Deep down, I felt a sense of connection to his father and that boy, so I agreed without hesitation. But over time, the allowance David sent home became smaller and smaller. His letters gradually shifted from talking about life in the military district to only mentioning bits and pieces about his father. I grew increasingly uneasy. What hurt me the most was how, without realizing it, he began comparing me to Rachel in his letters. Rachel isn't as strong as you. She always cries when things get tough, and I have to comfort her after training every day. Rachel is a picky eater, not easy to take care of like you. She has to eat a whole pound of white flour with every meal. Then, bit by bit, his letters began to talk about a child. Ethan's grown taller. He's strong like his father, but he's got Rachel's temper. I tried steering the conversation back to our own child, but he would always dodge it. Eventually, his letters stopped altogether. I thought he was just busy with military duties. He had once told me he was working hard for a promotion, so Ryan and I could join him in the military district. But when Ryan reached the age for household registration, I finally realized he hadn't been busy. He had started another family. I threatened suicide, and only then did David return home a month later. The first thing he said to me when we met again was an insult. Everyone at the base already thinks Rachel is my real wife. I stayed away to spare you some dignity. Was all this drama really just for the kid's school registration? Let Ryan go to the military school as my nephew. Rachel is kind, she'd never mistreat him. For the sake of my son's future, I agreed. When I saw them off at the train station, I carefully reminded David to be alert for kidnappers, to not sleep too deeply. But all he could think about was getting back to his beloved Rachel. He brushed off my concerns and before leaving even used Ryan to threaten me. Just stay in the village and stop trying to come to the military district. Otherwise, Ryan's identity could become a serious issue. I swallowed my grievances and returned to the village, bearing the gossip of old women and the harassment of drunkards alone. I sewed clothes through the night, ruining my eyesight just to save enough money to one day secretly visit my son. But then I received the news. Ryan had already gone missing on the train. When David told me, his tone was filled with indifference and irritation, as if the child who went missing wasn't even his own. I lost my mind and rushed to the police to file a report. But they told me that since Ryan wasn't registered in the system, tracking him would be incredibly difficult. I begged David to place a missing child notice in the paper, but he refused, saying it would embarrass Rachel and her son. It was a bitter winter. I realized my own stupidity and ignorance had led to this tragedy. In despair, I threw myself into the river. Everything from that life still burned vividly in my mind. In this life, I would never again place any hope in David. But before I could even reject David's suggestion, I heard a piercing cat scream mixed with my son's sob from inside the house. I stumbled and rushed in. Ryan was on the heated brick bed, crying so hard his little body shook. Standing smugly at the side was Ethan, arms akimbo. At his feet lay the lifeless body of a kitten. That kitten, I had rescued her from the snow while I was pregnant. She had grown up with Ryan. She felt more like family than David ever had. Before I could even question Ethan, David's accusations came crashing down on me. Looks like you're living just fine, huh? Even have the luxury of raising stray cats. What if that filthy animal had bitten Ethan? Rachel hurried over, frantically checking Ethan from head to toe. She let out a breath only after confirming there were no wounds. Watching the two of them act so fake made my voice turn cold. How did the cat die? Ethan proudly responded, "Our teacher said cats have 9 lives. If I don't kill one, how would I know if that's true?" Instead of scolding him for his cruelty, that couple actually praised him. He's got such a curious mind. He's going to be a brilliant scientist one day. Realizing the kitten was dead, Ryan clambered off the bed and staggered toward her, hunting the small body tightly in his arms. Big brother said I'm a bastard who came to steal his daddy. I'm not stealing. I'm not, Ryan sobbed. I just want me to be alive. Before I could even say a word to comfort him, David slapped Ryan hard across the face. This is what your mother taught you. Disrespecting your big brother over a filthy animal? If you acted like this at the base, kids would have been beaten to death for less. Seeing that he was about to hit Ryan again, I rushed forward and shielded my son with my body. I stared David straight in the eye and said, word by word, when a child misbehaves, it's the father's failure. You've never taught my son a single thing. What gives you the right to hit him? And you know very well whether my sons slandered Ethan or not. Without sparing another glance at David or Rachel, whose faces had turned pale from being called out, I wrapped Ryan in a blanket and took him straight to the hospital. It was snowing heavily, and most villagers, having taken favors from David's father, refused to give us a ride. Step by step, I trudged through the snow with Ryan in my arms, my heart growing colder with every step. At the hospital, the doctor carefully cleaned Ryan's cheek with iodine, frowning disapprovingly. No matter what he did, you shouldn't hit a child like this. Any worse, and it could have left a permanent scar. Tears streamed down my face as I kept apologizing. Ryan, seeing me cry, carefully tugged at my shirt. Don't cry, Mommy. Ryan's not hurt. It's Ryan's fault. I made Daddy mad as soon as he came home. Mommy, is Daddy gonna leave again? If Daddy stayed home, you wouldn't have to work so hard anymore. From our conversation, I could tell Ryan already knew that David was his father. At that moment, he feared it was because he hadn't been good enough that David got angry. I hugged him tightly. You're a good boy, Ryan. The man who hit you isn't your dad. Your real daddy is a hero who protects our country. Mommy would never lie to you. The next morning when we returned home, David, Rachel, and Ethan were still lounging on the heated bed. When David saw me come in, he didn't even move. He just snorted. Well, look who came back. Rachel is a guest in our home. Shouldn't you be fixing breakfast? I said nothing. I went to the yard and killed the last old hen we had. When the meal was almost ready, Rachel finally stretched and got up. Looking at me with false sweetness, she said, Emma, why didn't you ask me to help cook? You're too polite. You even made chicken for me. David nodded in approval. Now that's more like it. Be more accommodating with Rachel and we'll all get along just fine. I laughed bitterly inside but didn't show it. I served the chicken stew with mushrooms and called Ryan over to eat. Just as I was about to give him the drumstick, David's chopsticks darted in and snatched it away, placing it in Rachel's bowl. Rachel, you're not in good health. Eat the drumstick to build up your strength. Seeing he was about to grab the other one, I quickly moved and placed it in Ryan's bowl. Ryan, you're hurt. You need meat to heal. Just as Ryan picked up the drumstick, Ethan yanked it from his hands. That drumstick's mine. You're just a little bastard. You don't get to eat it. David didn't stop him. In fact, he looked on approvingly. I slapped Ethan hard across the face. Since you two won't raise him properly, I'll take on the burden and do it for you. Ethan burst into loud wails. Why, Dad, Mom, I want to go home. That old witch hit me. Rachel scooped Ethan into her arms, heart aching as she glared at me. Emma, if you've got a problem with me, fine. But why take it out on a child? He's still young. He doesn't know better. David stormed over, picked Ethan up, and looked at me with hatred in his eyes. So all that was fake, huh? I thought you'd finally come to your senses. But this is what we came back to. Since you don't know how to get along with Rachel and her son, then just stay in this village and reflect on yourself. And forget about Ryan going to the military school. With that, David carried Ethan out, pulling Rachel along with him. Ryan carefully took my hand, glanced at the drumstick, swallowed hard, and said softly, Mommy, I don't need the drumstick. Let's go get Daddy back. My heart ached as I gently stroked his head. Mommy will take you to find Daddy in a few days. After settling all the matters at home, 3 days later, I took Ryan and boarded the train to the military district. We had arrived at the base. I told the gatekeeper that I was David's wife. He looked me up and down with a mocking expression. You must be joking. Everyone knows Lieutenant David's wife is Rachel. If you're going to lie, at least do your homework. I didn't argue. I simply handed him my marriage certificate with David. He curled his lip with disdain and went to make a call. He wasn't exactly quiet on the phone. I could clearly hear from outside. Reporting, sir. David's ex-wife has come all the way from the countryside causing trouble. So now I was just the ex-wife causing a scene. Clearly David and Rachel had done their share of poisoning my reputation on base. After hanging up, the guard reluctantly led me to a 2-story building. This is the commanding officer's office. Go on in. A calm but sharp-looking female officer was already waiting for me at the door. The moment I saw her, I dropped to my knees. I've been abandoned, I said, while David enjoys life here after discarding his wife and son. Please help us. Help us get justice. Her face shifted from concern to fury. This is outrageous, she snapped, slamming her hand down on the desk. Her reaction gave me a sliver of hope that justice might finally be on my side. I clung to her legs, sobbing. Please, please give me and my child a chance to survive. Get those heartless, shameless people out of the military. The officer hesitated. Rachel is technically a martyr's widow, and when people like her make mistakes, the organization still tries to deal with things with care. David's record in the military is also excellent. I pulled Ryan to me and showed her his rough, scarred hands, burns from years of helping me gather firewood. I lifted his shirt to reveal his back, covered in bruises left by the village kids who bullied him. Then I raised my own shirt and showed the twisted scar on my stomach. The mark left from when I had to deliver him myself during a difficult labor because the local hospital didn't have enough surgeons to perform a C-section. Finally, I rolled up my pant leg and exposed the burn scars on my calf, left when a local thug shoved me into a stove while I was fighting off his assault. The officer's eyes softened with real sympathy. I saw it wasn't fake. I took the chance. I understand your difficulties, but I really can't go on like this. I'm requesting a divorce from David and hope to receive some form of compensation. She nodded gently. The organization will try to meet your requests. What kind of compensation are you looking for? There must be other soldiers here who were injured during war, I said carefully. If possible, I'd like the organization to act as a matchmaker. After divorcing David, I want to remarry. I'm willing to let my son take my new husband's surname. She agreed to my request and temporarily arranged for me to stay at David's military home, a small courtyard with a working well filled with blooming roses. The bathroom was made of neatly stacked bricks, not like the filthy outdoor toilets back in the village. In the center of the living room stood a large family portrait. David tall and handsome, Rachel with her gentle smile, and Ethan looking sweet and obedient. Anyone looking at it would think it was the perfect family. Ryan looked around with curiosity but didn't touch anything. He just held my hand obediently. We rested in the guest room for one night. The next day, the officer notified me that Ryan was now officially allowed to attend school on base, like any other child. She even helped me find a job as a seamstress. What David had failed to do for half his life took just 2 days with the help of the right people. Using the little money I had left, I bought a piece of fabric and sewed Ryan a new school bag. I didn't want him to be mocked like before for having old clothes or no bag. When Ryan came home after his first day at school, I checked him carefully. There were no signs of injury, no smell of garbage on his clothes. He wasn't walking on eggshells like he used to. Instead, he smiled and spoke excitedly. Mommy, I really like the kids and teachers here. Even when I couldn't answer questions, no one hit me. The kids actually played with me. They all called me by my name, not bastard. Seeing the smile on his face, I finally felt a sense of relief. For once, I'd made the right move in this life. On the third day, a young soldier in uniform knocked on our door. The moment we made eye contact, he straightened up and gave me a sharp military salute. "Ma'am," he said. "Hello. I'm Logan Lee," the man said. "Currently, Deputy Commander of Unit X, and your assigned match from the organization." Just then, two sharp voices rang out from the gate. "What are you doing at my house?" That was Rachel, a matchmaking candidate. That was David, stunned and furious. Rachel was the first to react. She quickly tried to stir up trouble. "Emma hasn't been back home for a while. We've all been so worried about you. Who would have thought we'd run into you here?" She added with fake concern. "I wonder if Emma's paid any visits to the commander's wife while we were gone. What exactly did you two talk about?" David's expression darkened the moment he heard Rachel's voice. But more than that, it was the word matchmaking that set him off. "What did you say to the commander?" he asked coldly. Not wanting to make a scene or complicate things further, I kept it brief. "I asked the commander to allow Ryan to attend school here on base." David's expression eased slightly. He reached out, trying to take my hand as if to rekindle old affection. But my next words froze him in place. "I also asked the commander to help me file for a divorce." His face went pale, even though he saw me as beneath Rachel. With none of her elegance, noble background or status as a martyr's widow, he had never seriously considered divorcing me. After all, I'd kept quiet in the countryside for years, shielding him from trouble. I even gave him a son. Realizing we had an audience, David moved closer and whispered beside my ear. "I know you've been through a lot, but don't just throw around words like divorce. Be good. You and Ryan should head back to the village for now. I promise I'll handle everything." I pretended not to understand. "What? You don't want a divorce?" I said loudly. "Then fine. Move my household registration here to the military district. The three of us can finally live together properly." At my words, Rachel's face turned ghostly white. Tears welled up in her eyes as she bit her lip, staring at David pitifully, silently accusing him of betraying her. David was caught between a rock and a hard place. The military was downsizing and he needed to climb higher to avoid being discharged. Rachel's identity as a martyr's widow was his ticket. With a hardened heart, he grabbed my arm and started pulling me toward the door. "You're leaving on the train tonight," he said coldly. "Take Ryan with you. He grew up in the village. He'll never be as outstanding as Ethan. Keeping him here will only embarrass both of us." Just then Ryan came back from school. He heard everything David said. The new school bag I had just sewn fell from his hands. His eyes turned red and he tried so hard to hold back tears. He wanted to shout that he didn't want to go back, that he'd work hard and study well so I wouldn't be ashamed of him. As David continued yanking my arm, Logan Lee, who had been standing quietly this whole time, stepped forward and shoved David away. "David," he said, standing protectively in front of me, "where do you think you're taking my matchmaking candidate?" David's eyes filled with fury. He stepped forward, ready to fight, until he noticed Logan's rank was higher. David clenched his fists, his jaw tightening. Then he turned to me and barked. "We're not even divorced yet and you're already going on blind dates. You shameless village whore. How many other men have you messed around with in that village?" Not satisfied with just insulting me, he pointed at Ryan. "I always suspected that kid wasn't mine. I was only home for one night. How convenient that you just happened to get pregnant." I was shaking with rage. Ryan, hearing him insult me like that, ran straight at him and sank his teeth into David's hand, refusing to let go. David raised his leg, about to kick Ryan away, when a furious female voice thundered from the doorway. "David, what the hell do you think you're doing?" It was the commander's wife, herself a battle-hardened frontline officer. She pointed a furious finger at David. "This is your wife, your son, the people closest to you. Yet you use the filthiest words to insult them. How can the military trust you with any important responsibility?" I silently held Ryan tighter, forcing myself to swallow back my tears. I wouldn't let anyone see my shame. Hearing the commander's reprimand, David finally pulled his leg back, though his eyes stayed locked on me. He clearly realized I had reported everything to the commander. The commander continued. He told us you were already divorced from your ex-wife. That was the only reason the organization allowed you and Rachel to live together. But now it turns out you abandoned your wife and son. Do you know what that's called? If we take it seriously, it's a violation of military marriage laws, an offense that belongs in a military court. Rachel tried to speak up on his behalf, but the commander shot her a deadly glare. Rachel, were you aware that David already had a wife and child? Rachel opened her mouth to lie, but under the commander's sharp eyes, she lowered her head, guilt written all over her face. The compensation you received from the military was meant to give you protection and dignity, not to help you break up someone else's family. After the scolding, the commander handed down the disciplinary decision. David was demoted from deputy commander to company commander. The house he had been living in on base was reassigned to me and Ryan. As for Rachel, because of her status as the widow of a fallen soldier, she was only given a verbal warning. But due to David's demotion, he lost his qualification for family relocation. The house on base was taken back, and if he wanted to live in the city, he would have to use the compensation money to buy his own home. That same afternoon I received my divorce certificate. Right after our divorce was finalized, David rushed to file a marriage application and officially registered his marriage with Rachel the very next day. News of what happened between the three of us spread like wildfire across the base. The women here were just as gossipy as the village wives back home. Every time Rachel went to the market, people whispered behind her back. So it's her, huh? Always acted so pure and proper. Who would have thought she'd steal someone else's husband? I heard her kid's not even the martyr's biological child. She had that boy with David. Otherwise, why would he abandon his own son to raise another woman's? And she still has the nerve to take the martyr's compensation. If it were me, I'd dig a hole in the ground and never come out again. Rachel gritted her teeth at the gossip. At first, she tried the same tactic she used in the village, handing out candy to everyone. But people here had seen it all. They slammed the door in her face. Even Ethan had a hard time at school now. Before, he was a martyr's son and the child of a deputy commander. He acted superior and everyone humored him. But now, he was just the son of a demoted officer, and even his parentage was under suspicion. He still behaved as arrogantly as before and naturally got what he deserved in return. The rumors grew so wild that even the upper leadership on base took notice. Since it involved the reputation of a martyr's widow and her child, they couldn't just let it slide. An investigation was launched, and they really did uncover something. Turns out, the martyr Rachel claimed as Ethan's father had suffered an injury in the line of duty that left him infertile. His mother had always suspected Ethan wasn't her biological grandson. Back when Ethan's last name was changed, she even came to the base to protest. This time, the entire base was in an uproar. The organization called Rachel in for a conversation. Though she tried to remain calm, she nervously insisted that Ethan was the martyr's son. But the truth was, she wasn't even sure herself. She had been involved with David during the same time. The organization arranged for a DNA test between Ethan and David. The results showed a clear father-son match. It was as if a bomb had gone off. Rachel was forced to return all the compensation she had received and lost her job on the base. David, on the other hand, was thrilled to confirm he had a second son, but his reputation was ruined beyond repair. Rachel took Ethan and returned to the rural village I had spent decades in. But there were no roses in that yard, only wild greens you could eat to stay alive. Now, Ethan had become the new bastard in the mouths of the village children, just like Ryan had once been, and he was bullied just the same. As for me, I was preparing to marry Logan Lee. I was deeply grateful that he had stepped in that day and stopped David from dragging me back to the village. To show my appreciation, I prepared a full homemade meal to host him properly. After a few rounds of wine, we were both a little drunk. I asked him in a haze. You have such a high rank, and you're so handsome. I'm sure plenty of women would be thrilled to marry you. So why would you agree to a blind date with someone like me? A divorced woman with a kid. At that, Logan didn't pretend anymore. Blushing from the alcohol, he answered seriously. Because of an injury I got during a mission. I'll never be able to have kids of my own. At first, it was because you were willing to let your son change his surname. But then I saw how you raised him all alone. You've suffered so much, but you stayed strong for your child. I really admire women like you, who are brave enough to fight for their lives. Then he stood up straight, smoothed out his uniform, and saluted me. I swear I'll spend my life taking care of you and your son. Please give me a chance. I was touched by his sincerity, but I still wanted to observe him for a few more days, to see how he and Ryan would get along. Turned out Ryan really liked this Uncle Logan. Despite being a deputy commander with a busy schedule, Logan still picked him up from school every day. He'd always buy little snacks for him along the way. I watched as Ryan's cheeks grew rounder and his smile brighter day by day. One evening, I asked him softly, Ryan, would you be okay with Uncle Logan becoming your dad? He paused. Will this new dad make mommy cry? Yes. Will he hit me like the old one? My heart ached. I silently cursed David under my breath. But I still smiled and promised again and again that Logan would treat both of us kindly. That very afternoon, I went with Logan to get our marriage certificate. The next day, I took Ryan to change his name. His new name was now Leo Lee, inspired by the phrase, soaring straight to the skies. Back when I first named him, David had just learned about my pregnancy in the middle of his honeymoon phase with Rachel. The news had sparked tension between the two of them, so David named his son Ethan, hoping the boy would grow up to be articulate and accomplished. Meanwhile, my son was named Ryan at the time, meaning extra or unwanted, because that's what he was to David. But now, with his new name, Leo carried the hopes of two loving parents who truly cared about his future. When Logan and I hosted our wedding banquet, David showed up skulking outside the courtyard. He'd had a rough time lately. Because of his personal misconduct, he was demoted. His former peers were now his superiors, which was a hard pill to swallow for someone as prideful as he was. The frustration showed in his work. His poor attitude and sloppy performance during training led to more mistakes and even further demotions. He was now just a squad leader. He rubbed his hands together nervously and gave me a pleading smile. Can I just see Ryan one more time? I heard he's calling the commander's wife his godmother now. The greed in his voice made me sick. I rejected him without hesitation. His face darkened immediately. I'm still his biological father. I may be struggling now, but you think I like seeing everyone look down on me while you all live the good life? What's wrong with helping me out a little? I looked at him with cold disdain. Oh, is the perfect marriage you fought so hard for not making you happy after all? That hit a nerve. His face went pale. He cursed Rachel silently in his head, called her a selfish pampered brat who couldn't handle life in the countryside. His demotion had crushed any future she'd hoped for, so she started secretly hooking up with a local official as his mistress. He still looked decent, so one night when he was being harassed by several thugs, she grabbed the cash and ran, leaving him and their child behind. She disappeared into the night. Ethan became the village's new punching bag. He didn't know how to cook, and no one gave him food. By the time the police found him, he had already died alone inside the house. The news reached the base, and it only made David's situation worse. Desperate, he came crawling back, hoping I could ask Logan to pull some strings for him. Just then, Logan stepped outside with long strides. David, he said firmly, Leo Lee is now my son. He has nothing to do with you. My parents waited nearly 70 years to have a grandson. If you even think about trying to take him from us, they'll fight you to the end. Hearing that, David shrank back immediately. David was the kind of man who worshipped power and looked down on the weak. At the wedding banquet that day, when he saw Logan's parents, people he once viewed as untouchable, he realized he couldn't afford to offend anyone there. With no other choice, he slipped away quietly. Not long after, he applied to be transferred out of the military into a civilian position. But because of his low rank, all he could get was a small clerk job in a local office. Ironically, his current boss used to be one of his subordinates. Even worse, back when Ethan was still in school, he had gotten into a fight and injured that boss's son, left him bleeding. When the boy's father came to demand an explanation, David brushed it off, calling it a harmless fight between children. Spoiled children are like sand, they slip through your fingers. Now his former subordinate was making sure David tasted the consequences of failing to raise his own kid. Meanwhile, Leo had started middle school. Logan was strict with him but also deeply loving. His grandparents poured all of their family's resources into raising him. I watched as Leo slowly shed his old insecurity and fragility and grew into someone strong, confident and bright. The guilt I had carried for so long as his mother finally eased. If only just a little. My current life felt fulfilling. My son was safe and growing up strong. That alone had been the biggest wish of my entire life. But I still hadn't forgotten the version of me from my past life. Lost and hopeless. For her, and for the countless mothers like her, I took Logan's hand and boarded the same train where my son had once been kidnapped in that former life. Logan had sharp instincts and an incredible sense of danger. With his support, we worked with the police to take down the entire trafficking ring in one sweep. The kidnapped children were rescued. As I looked at their small, innocent faces, I was grateful I made that decision. And I hoped that in that past life, the son I lost had somehow found a better ending too. Logan was promoted because of the success of the operation, and he was soon transferred to the capital. His parents were even more pleased with me after that. They believed that his promotion had everything to do with my support. But what made me happiest was knowing that Leo would now have even more opportunities to grow and thrive in the capital. After I finished packing our things, I stood at the door, taking one last lingering look at our little courtyard. I felt reluctant to leave. It had come to symbolize so much of my healing and peace. In the distance, I heard Leo and Logan calling, "Mom, honey, hurry up, the train's about to leave." I quickly locked the door and smiled as I walked toward them. From here on out, it would all be good days. This is the end of my story. Subscribe to not miss more videos like this. And remember, history is a chance to become a better person, and see you soon.